Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get the webinar started. We've still got people coming in, but Jeff and I are ready to roll. So we're going to get going today. Today, we're talking about 5 use cases for AI in content marketing. This is part of our Marketing AI Institute webinar series. We try and do 2 of these a month. Jeff, if you want to jump to the webinar slide, we'll talk a little bit about that. So the series is, we try and do 2 a month. We started it last month. We've got MarketMuse obviously today. Drift is coming up on August 20th. You can see the link there. We'll send an email to everybody afterwards. It'll give you access to download the deck and also get access to the video on demand. But at any time, you can go to that page and access any upcoming webinars and register for them, as well as any of the on-demand webinars. So today, as I mentioned, this is Jeff. Jeff, say hi to everybody. Jeff with his nice Zoom background.
Hey, Paul, thanks for joining me. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely, man. We did this last month, I think, with MarketMuse. So, yeah. So Jeff and I have known each other for years now, and he was one of the early people when we started exploring AI that I started talking with Jeff and Aki and his partners at MarketMuse. And so we have a ton of respect for MarketMuse and what they're doing in the industry. We actually use MarketMuse ourselves for our content strategy and production. So this is a cool one for me today to be able to kind of riff with Jeff a little bit. And there's some really interesting things that have happened in the last even couple weeks with natural language generation. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I'm looking forward to that. The agenda today. Actually, before we do that, questions now in support. Now we're all probably familiar with Zoom by this point since we're all living on Zoom. But if you have any questions during, go ahead and ask those. We have our team, both teams from Market AI Institute and MarketMuse are on the panel so they can help you if anything comes up during. I'm going to take 2 minutes and tell you about the Institute if you're not familiar with who we are and what we do. Jeff's going to go into the 5 use cases for AI and content marketing, give you a little preview of some of the things we're doing with Academy, and then we'll go into Q&A. And we'll also have a few poll questions in between. So if you're not familiar with Marketing AI Institute, we started it in 2016, really just as a blog to see if other people were as interested as we were in the topic. And then in 2019, we actually split it off as its own entity. And so today, the Institute has about 17,000 subscribers. Go ahead and jump ahead, Jeff. So we've got 20,000 website users, about 70% year-over-year growth, 17,500 plus subscribers, and 300 attendees at the inaugural conference. So what started as a blog about 4 years ago has really grown into an online community and an audience that's rapidly growing. We're adding about 1,000 new subscribers a month. Our belief is that AI can be your competitive advantage. There is no doubt the impact AI is going to have on the business world and marketing industry, and yet so many marketers still struggle to understand what it is and how to pilot it in their organizations. So the way we explain it to people is when you're thinking about getting started, don't try and tackle everything at once. Don't think about these grand projects. Try and focus on things that you already do every day that you can make more intelligent. So think of these narrowly defined use cases where you have very high probabilities of the AI actually making a measurable impact on your business. So what does an AI use case look like? For us, it's data-driven, repetitive, and/or you're making a prediction. Those are the 3 criteria. You don't have to satisfy all of them necessarily, but if you think about the things as a marketer you're doing every day already that requires data or should be using data to do it, or if you're trying to predict human behavior or some action or the success of something, we're constantly making predictions as marketers. We just don't think about it as prediction. And so Jeff's going to kind of take us in now. I'll drop off the video so we can focus on Jeff, but he's going to talk to us about AI use cases specific to the content marketing space. And again, feel free to ask questions as we're going. We'll filter those in and then get to them at the end.
Thanks, Paul, for that lead in. And I think one thing I'll start with is that Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute has been focused on doing large-scale surveys, research studies to find what use cases really matter to content marketers, to search marketers, to content strategists, And what we're going to focus on today are the ones that consistently win those polls as being major pain points, as being major things that can lead to growth in KPIs for content marketers and their teams. But the way I want to kind of start today is to focus on this data point first. This is from a research study from Content Science. And it says that still, right now, as people are consuming even more content than they ever have before, most of us being at home or being in home offices, reading a lot more, doing a lot less, 65% of users think web content is hit or miss. This means that trust and authority is being judged constantly. So how has your content marketing strategy, how has your content strategy in general changed to focus on not just getting content out there, but getting content out there that's going to generate trust, going to generate authority, going to exhibit expertise consistently so that you're not putting out misses. You're not putting out things that don't pass the sniff test when you publish content. The first thing we look at before I get into the use cases are all your current processes and what data sources. You saw Paul's how to get AI implemented in a pilot. It's data driven, it's repeatable, it's going to drive the needle, it's going to move the needle. What kind of workflows do you currently have that maybe haven't been updated in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 cough years that you're still publishing against? Some of these things that we'll talk about today involve mimicking competitors, include looking only at top performing competitors to emulate, or using out-of-date research processes where maybe you don't even know where the data comes from to determine what you're going to create, what you're going to update, or you're using data sources that don't represent what it means to be an authority on a topic. They might represent Google search volume or pay-per-click competition only. They're not giving you the information that you need to truly make a decision about who you are, who you want to be, what internal challenges you want to solve, mapping to the entire buy cycle, telling the story to your prospects, telling the story to people who are reading your publications or buying your products, that you actually are the expert. And then leading back to that last slide, you're the hit. You're the person who's publishing content that's great. Okay. And that's what we want. So you got to first examine, set up the mirror, look at all your processes internally and say, what's old? What's using data that I don't trust? What's maybe some things that we're used to, we're really comfortable with that we can challenge? And the use cases that we'll go through today are heavily focused on this content strategy component. And Paul's going to put a poll in here. And this comes out to say, what are the big things that you focus on or that you wish you could focus on more with your content strategy? And the use cases that we'll talk about focus on identifying gaps and opportunities in your and competitive content. This can be a page level analysis. This could be a site level, or if you're a large publisher, maybe even a network analysis. Where do you have strengths? Where do you have weaknesses? Where do you have gaps at the page level or the section level, or even on the topic level? And secondly, how do you prioritize what you should focus on? And there's a trick there, which I'll get into at the end of this discussion. It's why prioritize? You have various reasons why you're building plans. This is the nuance of content planning. This is what makes great content strategists great. It's that they're able to prioritize topics based on the business needs, not just because of some number, some ranking. How can you predict and improve performance prior to publishing? How can you get into the situation where you know your current content efficiency and you know that you're likely to win this much when you publish against these things? Can you create drafts? Can you create content briefs for your writers to get on the same page with them before you publish? And then can you create drafts using natural language processing and natural language generation? And then last, how do you increase efficiencies throughout those processes? And what does that process look like? Do you even have a structured data process, a structured process? What we see is a pretty widespread in the poll results. I love seeing that because it shows that there's a lot of folks that are struggling with all of these things. And the main one, the main two that won was increasing efficiency with content creation. How do I define efficiency? I think it's important. How many items do I publish? How many, I call it motions. How many motions of publishing? How many motions of updating or optimization do I have? How many of those achieve the goals that I predicted or set out? And then predicting performance before publishing. That is clearly, I want to be able to say, I'm highly likely to succeed if I cover these things and I cover them well. If I put out content that's equal to or better than my competitors every time. If I put stuff out there that tells the story that I'm the expert, I have a highest chance of being successful. And let's start with the first, gaps and opportunities. How can I do this? How can I do this at scale with artificial intelligence? So when we're doing content audits or content inventory, we're looking at situations, maybe at the page level, I'm looking at one thing. Well, artificial intelligence and the scale that's available allows you to immediately level this up. So instead of looking at maybe the top 3 ranking pages and comparing them to mine, I'm able to look at all the content that exists on a topic, anything I can find. Maybe people just don't have their sites set up well, but they've got wonderful content. Why wouldn't I analyze that content? Why wouldn't I analyze maybe PDF content that doesn't have a chance to succeed when I'm doing analysis of what it means to be an expert? If I can evaluate content comprehensiveness at scale, if I can evaluate how one would cover a topic comprehensively as an expert, and I understand my buyer journey, I understand my research journey, and I can look at massive quantities of content with data analysis and technology and cloud technology that allows us to look at 10,000 articles, 10,000 pages, hundreds of thousands of pages in minutes. Whereas, years ago, that would have taken 30, 40 hours to analyze. I can quickly figure out by layering that over my own site where my gaps and opportunities are. I can quickly figure out why I'm an authority, why the Marketing Artificial Intelligence Institute site crushes it for natural language generation topics. It's because they've covered the entire research life cycle. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But what gaps do they still have? I like to talk through this in real terms. Maybe they haven't covered applications that aren't informational. They haven't covered specific vendors. Maybe they haven't covered troubleshooting with regard to those technologies. So those are things that they can expand on. This is the thing that you can now have with artificial intelligence technology, with data analysis, natural language processing at scale that's available. So if you don't have this in-house, it's something really note. Am I able to confidently do this, or am I using outdated tactics where I'm just comparing maybe a page to another, or I'm not actually analyzing what it means to be an expert on a topic? I'm kind of just looking at keyword rankings and letting the tail wag the dog with that research. And the next phase really is to say, what should I update and why should I update? And there's a poll that's being sent along that asks just generally, how frequently do you update any content? Not every content item, but so many publishers, especially publishing, they don't ever look back. So many challenges happen when this happens. So many times teams, they just publish and they're looking ahead. They don't look backwards. Well, I've got great content. I've got content I likely rely on for traffic. I rely on for leads. I rely on for sales. And that content being updated, that content really telling the story of now is extremely important. But also, okay, looking at this monthly, oh wow, congratulations, we've got a good group. Quarterly, yearly, and 26% never, 30 quarterly, and I've got annually. Okay, that's way higher than the industry average, so props to everyone. But it's going back and saying, not just when you publish, it's going back to the pages that should be interwoven to the thing you just published. You've got to be able to go back and say, this is a page that deserves to still be in the middle of this conversation, in the middle of the reader journey, so that we can continue to educate and drive people down the journey that they're on, whether it's an information gathering, whether it's a purchase, whether it is a lead generation end game. And how can you know what you should update? There's so many reasons to update, right? How can you know what's going to be the biggest win for you? How do you know what content items deserve to be expanded? One of the big things here that artificial intelligence can surface is focused on intent research, because let's just say you were covering natural language processing and natural language generation 2 years ago with content. Actually, let's just say a year ago. And that content gained ground. It was authoritative. The industry has changed so much in these 2 years that the intents behind these queries, the intents that people are typing into search engines have changed. The content that's being published is different, and all the information is different. So there's so many reasons to update. It's making sure that it's telling the right story. It's making sure that things are up to date. But it's also maybe the world has changed in the way that they think about these words, think about these topics. And does your content represent that new world? So what artificial intelligence now can surface is wide-scale intent analysis and saying, what's the most favored intent? What's the things that are performing well on this topic? But also, what are all those intents? Because maybe there's new variants that people are just now searching for. And before they weren't. Why? Why are those intents? What do they exist? Is there content that satisfies those users that maybe wouldn't even have existed 6 months ago? That analysis can now be done at scale. And that's a big difference than just looking at keyword research tools and looking at the words that have variants. Very important there. It's how you take information like that and turn it into a narrative and turn it into educating your strategy. Which of these intents do I have? Which of them don't I have? Which of these intents have are part of the narrative that I wish to tell with my content strategy and with my content on my site? And then, you know, just for fun, right? Which of my pages, if I update them, are gonna grow? That's how you put points on the board quick. And I'll get into some quick win tactics a little bit later. Building a topical authority plan is also key with content. Historically, people haven't thought through what comprehensive means, haven't thought through being an authority. It's not just about building trust, but it's about telling the story that you're an expert so that you can be granted that state of being a topical authority, being an authority on a concept. And I use this example because it's just super obvious, but this fits with any buy cycle. This fits with any user journey. In this case, if I write a comprehensive collection of content about types of heart failure and I leave out ejection fraction, if I leave out cardiomyopathy, if I leave out valvular heart disease, am I truly the expert? What if I have one of those things and there's no content when someone comes in on it? They're like, whoa, you missed this major topic here. These are easy examples, but this fits in any concept. This fits in any buy cycle. What if you have an article? What if you have topics related to only pricing in a B2B purchase journey? Well, what if you have that? Why are you the authority on pricing when you haven't written anything that's about thought leadership? You haven't written anything about awareness phase. You haven't written anything that compares features, benefits, understands pain points. So if you apply this concept, this is easy to understand gap analysis at the page level for something that's like, hey, obviously you should have this type of heart failure if you're going to try to cover them all. You can see how that applies to a more robust purchase journey evaluation. And you can also see where going back and updating content, making sure that it's interwoven to the rest of your content. Clusters is a very common way of doing that. But you can see in any of these cases where maybe I have these things, but they're out in left field, they're not linked to, they're old, they haven't been updated. Well, maybe it's not contributing to the overall value of all the coverage that you have on this topic. So going back and updating and then ensuring that you're covering all your bases, you're answering all the common user questions, you're publishing content that truly exhibits your expertise. All of this is possible now through large scale data analysis and natural language processing. You can literally say, amongst this topic, here's the things that I have covered well, here's the things I don't have covered well. This is where I need to fill in gaps. These are things I can lean into because I've got authority. So I'm already a powerhouse here, but I'm missing some of these variants. I'm not covering them well. I'm not speaking to maybe a less mature user. I'm speaking to an expert user with my content. That's a gap too. Even just speaking on buyer maturity or purchase journey maturity or the purchase journey in general or the type of query. I know this is a little bit esoteric, but if you look at, maybe I don't have awareness phase content that is informational for this particular topic. So the big takeaway here is you can't just cover words anymore. You've got to cover journeys. You've got to cover intents to truly tell the story that you've got all the content that's out there. So many times we look at the one page, one word concept. If you're still doing one page, one word concept, you're in trouble. Maybe one page, one intent, maybe one page, one intent by cycle combination. But if you still got a one page, one word mentality in your work, artificial intelligence can take you to the next level. All right, another one we talked about, predicting and improving performance before publishing. There's no reason for your organization to ever publish content that isn't equal to or better than all of your competitors every time from the standpoint of quality and comprehensiveness. That technology is out there. And even more points, if you've got subject matter experts that can add their own value adds, add production level, production quality, add imagery, add engagement vehicles to the mix. But from a text specifically, through text analysis and natural language processing, data science that's out there that you can easily access, you can say, I am never going to publish an article on a targeted intent that isn't at least as good as everything that's out there. From the standpoint of comprehensiveness, from the standpoint of answering all the common user needs, the things that people want to see answers to, the value they desire when they're looking at an article about a particular topic. So how do you manifest this? This was one of the biggest pain points. Let's make sure that everything we publish gets to the bottom of the core goals of the user who's taking this journey, and then is equal to or better than everyone we've got. If I can check those boxes every time I hit publish, I'm going to be able to predict improvements of efficiency and improvements of performance. The fun topic, natural language generation. This takes many forms. We've all probably seen some things, and Paul and I will talk about it a little bit later about this. But natural language generation doesn't have to mean writing articles for me. It could mean building outlines. It can mean building drafts that then I can augment. Very, very few instances are you going to take content that's strictly out of generation and not edit it. It's almost never going to happen. You might do that with a scaled something that's behind the scenes, but to build and maintain trust and ensure that you're going to tune the content to your goals and augment your writer's expertise. Natural language generation can be leveraged for so many different things. One thing that we do effectively is build outlines and build content briefs. So then I can approve those briefs and then generate drafts that are within guidelines. So I know what I'm going to get. And then I have the expectation of writers that they're going to augment and improve and focus on being creative, focus on narrative. But what you see out there kind of in the news, right, is, oh gosh, NLG can write anything. It can't. It has to be bound. And being able to bind this information will allow you to apply it to your use cases. It'll allow us to say, hey, let's keep the guardrails on this in our goals. This is a project where generating drafts or building outlines to get on the same page with my writers so that when I make orders for content, I know what I'm going to get, can have immediate, huge benefits. Even just for organizational love for one another, right? We don't often talk about love from an AI perspective, but if you get on the same page with your experts, with your writers, the people who you love because they're writing great content, using NLP and using NLG technology can get you there very quickly. And that's where I think it can really be a pain point fixer. And I mentioned this, right? We always want to review for style and correctness. We always want to weave in promotional language, our own human experiences, and enrich this data. But technologies are going to be available where long-form content generated to my spec of information, specifications, without templating, without abstraction where you're just cutting and pasting, and without degradation are available. This is available, not in 6 months. It's available today. So if you have use cases, maybe, I always like to use the case of a reporter who can only cover maybe for the next Olympics, whenever that may be, they can only cover 10% of the events. Well, technologies that are out there now might allow them to cover 60, 70, or even all of the events. So thinking critically about situations where you're not building the entire cluster of content, you're only building one page because that's all you can get done. maybe you can build more and then tune it for style correctness, tune it for your experience and your expertise, tune it for production level and engagement. You might be able to knock out entire clusters of content or fill those gaps quicker because you're not hamstrung on just doing the one thing you know you can get done. Those are the ways that I like to think about how I can really accelerate my teams. It's stuff I likely wasn't going to get to, but I really wish I could because I know my readers would appreciate it. And then tracking that back to that entire process. How many processes do you have documented? One thing that I always like to talk about is the content inventory or content auditing process. How often you do this is typically an instant prescription as to where you're at as an org. This is, the #1 maturity metric. I'm amazed. There is some people on here that do monthly audits and inventories, high fives, quarterly, yearly, or we've never done one. Oftentimes people feel that doing inventories and doing audits, the highest score of this poll was never, right? Okay. People think it's really hard. People think you can't do it. There's technology that's available. There is wonderful evaluation, crawl-based evaluation solutions that are inexpensive. There's also more robust solutions that get into strengths and weaknesses, that get into gap analysis on the fly, that get into where my weakest pages are, even get into prescriptions as to what to do as a result of those things. So there's all across the board of artificial intelligence and natural language processing to make that a reality for your organization. It's not something that you have to do only, even on the monthly people. You can get into this case where it's done even more robustly, even more effectively. But the goal of content inventories and that research and that planning is the plans, right? And then, so what on your researching and planning processes are you leveling up with large scale natural language processing, with large scale artificial intelligence, maybe even with personalization that you weren't able to do before? And then, in the briefing process, do you have briefs? How are you building them? Are you building them by hand? Are they subjective or are they not subjective? Do they include data? Do they include data analysis of historical wins, of the world, of all coverage, of today's intents, not the one that you think is right, but actually looking at the way it's covered? All of those things can improve your briefing process. Because we want to get to the point where writers feel supported. The editor is doing less editing. They're seeing content that they expected to get. They ordered it, right? They said, here's a great structure. Give me a great narrative. Give me creative output. Give me high production level. Give me your expertise, but have it fit here. Because I know that if you write something that's going to fit in this construct, we're going to do well. We're going to be able to predict our success. And now I'm going to feel supported as a writer because I don't have to go in and do stupid keyword research that I don't want to do anyway. I'm getting information that is telling the story of, hey, the person who's the content strategist feels that this is the general guidelines, and maybe even here's some snippets of things that I should be thinking about. I'm going to be able to execute more content more consistently. I'm less of the time I'm going to deliver a draft that they're going to spit back in my face. I'm going to be writing content that I know is going to pass that first sniff. It's going to say, oh yeah, that's what we expected. You did a great job. You made it even more your own, but it met these basic frameworks. And that's going to be able to make us win more consistently and have a happier team. Because publishing content that isn't successful doesn't just not succeed. It doesn't just knock the ROI down. It takes the wind out of the team. Nothing's worse than building great content and having it fail. I mean, that is the biggest pain point nobody wants to talk about. How many content items? Many teams have content efficiency rates of less than 10%. That means 1 out of 10 of their content items works against their KPIs. It means 9 out of 10 content items they're building fail. We talk to teams that are even worse than that quite often. Some teams knocking out 40 to 50%. That's the top scale, but you also have to think about those averages. And then going back and updating content. Are you updating the right content? Are you updating it and then it's doing more? Do you know the reasons why you should update something? And then maybe when you need to expand it or write something new to support it. All of those things, you have to have data driving those decisions. If you've got somebody who has the expertise to make the call, the biased call based on their expertise, even better. because if you combine their data with that subject matter expertise and they are open to that union, that's when the winners really score. Some of the best publishers out there are taking editorial experts, longtime editors-in-chief, and augmenting their intelligence to say, I think this is where the buzz is going. Use the data to validate that. And we're really going to invest now because we know how much we need to invest to win. Those are processes that are available today. Not like 6 months of onboarding, not 10 years of integration, not 10 days of integration. You can have this information at your disposal in a week with available technologies. And the impacts, 125 hours a month to create 10 pieces of content. Painful. These research steps, if you archive out the processes, if you just document all the individual processes, to do this work manually is a bear. This seems like a full-time person's job or more, and they might not even do it well without backed up without data. This can all be done in minutes with the available technology that's there. Okay, that's kind of scary, but it's true. What can be done in 30 hours can be done in seconds. What can be done in 125 hours can be done in minutes to apply and build strategy against these things, with the goal of answering these most common plan types. This is what you want to take this data and turn it into. You want to be able to say, there's a few exceptions here, which I'll get into, but if you are in local, if you're in e-commerce, you're going to have a couple different plan types. If you're doing a site migration, if you're focused on ABM content, all of that can be accelerated, but that's not going to be your most traditional everyday content marketing strategy. Most of your plans, most of the stuff you publish is going to fall into one of these 4 buckets. Quick wins, surgical strikes. What should I create that's going to be successful today to fill gaps, to take advantage of authority, to lean into some wins, to cover more things in the buyer journey? Quick wins, put dollars on the board. I want to publish a certain amount of that every period. Risk-based. I'm really worried about this new competitor. I'm really worried about this person that's publishing 10 times as much as me. I'm really worried about losing traffic to this page that I haven't updated in 6 years. I almost said 6 months, but I haven't updated in 6 years, but it's generating 60% of my traffic. We all have those embarrassing pages on our site. We're goal-based. We want to own this topic. We want to own this word. Don't say that anymore. You want to own the topic after this discussion. I want to own this topic. I want to improve ground against this. I want to generate more leads focused on this product. I've got these goals. How do I get there? And then the last one is just organizational fulfillment. Many of us are just order takers. Kind of sucks, but it's true. We're a marketing services organization internally. We've got an editorial calendar that we don't dictate all of it. But when we publish content, we want to make sure we put our best foot forward. So executing on my editorial calendar and making sure everything that I publish is crushing it, is the best it can be, it hits on its potential. Maybe that's going to allow us to make the case for building cluster support content, for getting budget to knock out some of these quick wins, or to get more internal buy-in on the goal-based or risk-based decisions that we need to make. Overall, this is what you want out of all of these AI use cases. You want to be able to confidently use data to walk in the door and say, here's the plans we want to put forth. Here's what needs to be funded for content. We want to knock these things surgically out. We want to protect ourselves against this competitor, and here's why. We want to win on these 6 topics for the year, and we want to fulfill our editorial calendar. And solutions are out there that will solve all of these problems today. And this is the journey that you'll be on to get these pilots. Maybe you get a pilot that's just quick wins, because that puts points on the board, makes everybody really happy. Maybe you get a pilot on the goal that you know the organization has for a particular concept or topic to build awareness for your brand. Maybe you know that everybody is just kind of freaked out about a competitor and you want to put your best foot forward to get ahead of them, identify their gaps and how you can take advantage of them. All this stuff's available. And this is the easiest way that I like to think about the outputs of content marketers use cases with AI right now. All right. Thank you so much. I know we have some Q&A, but I know, Paul, also you had some questions that you wanted to highlight. So.
Yeah, so thanks, Jeff. That's awesome. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A panel now. Um, and if you want, Jeff, go ahead and jump ahead while people are putting in their questions. Give
Absolutely.
a little overview here of AI Academy for Marketers. If you're not familiar with what we've got going on, there is now a dedicated online education platform and community for this exact kind of content. There's 30 plus exclusive courses, certifications for marketers, answering AI videos, which are like 2 to 4 minute answers to the most common questions and pain points. There's a private Slack community, monthly Ask Me Anything sessions with instructors, and some exclusive product demos. So the website's there, marketingacademy.ai, and there's a promo code. Go ahead, jump one more, Jeff. You can actually learn more from Jeff, and this is the topic I want to jump into right away, is natural language generation. But Jeff has a course there, and then go ahead and jump one more, Jeff. There's also a certification course for content marketing.
It's 57 minutes.
What's that? It's 50. It is 57 minutes. I didn't even know that.
All right.
So there is a certification course, which is 2.6 hours without the interactive part, where you can actually go through and get a certification in content marketing and AI. And that's taught by Mike Kaput, who's the director of Marketing AI Institute. So again, if you're interested in really expanding your knowledge and capabilities with AI and using it to give yourself a competitive advantage in your career, I suggest you take a look at marketingacademy.ai. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into questions, and I am going to start with the natural language generation, Jeff. So little more background. So I got interested in artificial intelligence in 2011. And so I started reading and researching AI, but I didn't understand. I came out of journalism school. So I was a graduate of the Ohio University School of Journalism. And so I'm a writer by trade. I'm a storyteller. I've written 2 books. I've published thousands of articles. It's what I do. But in 2015, I was at South by Southwest, and it was the Automated Insights, which you're familiar with, Jeff, and the managing editor of the Associated Press. And they told the story on stage of how the Associated Press was using what they were calling natural language generation to write analyst briefings or to write earnings reports. So they went from doing 300 a quarter to 3,000. And so I sat there in the audience. I was like, what in the heck are they talking about? Can AI actually write stories? Am I done being a storyteller in my career? So that was a very rudimentary form of natural language generation. So what I wanted to start with, Jeff, is can you unpack for us what exactly is natural language generation and kind of where are we with it today in terms of answering that question? And you touched on it a little bit, but can AI write content? If I'm a blogger, am I done blogging in 2 years?
Well, those are many different questions. But I always like to talk about a little bit of the history, and the recent history has really accelerated at a level that I don't think anyone could have predicted. It's so fast. The acceleration in the last 6 to 9 months is dramatic. But the original applications for marketers, or the efforts like you were discussing, were heavily fixed on templating. Not Mad Libs, but sort of like Mad Libs, where I'm getting the stories that can be told in a repeated way, and I'm filling in data. So maybe if you think about it, I've got a spreadsheet, and now I've got maybe, the outlines or the Mad Libs, and I'm building massive quantities of content that have some variability. They read reasonably well. Those were the first implementations that you see. You then see a next from a content marketer's perspective, and that allowed us to do things like knockout briefings, to report on all the Olympic results for every event in a way.
Political campaigns.
Who won the elections. I think Washington Post published with Heliograph, which is their in-house solution, that they were averaging 18% of political results were covered with
human writers.
Sort of editorial docs. With the first time they implemented it, it was 100% of all local, regional, state, and federal elections were covered, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And 100% of the sports in that other example. So that was kind of the next wave.
But in those examples, just to clarify, the machine wasn't coming up with words on its own. It was trained what to write and given templates to write.
Very templatized. It's not teaching the next word. It's not telling the next set of phrases. And so in the training course for NLG that's in the AI Academy for Marketers, I get into kind of the nuanced approaches that people try to predict the appropriate next word or predict the appropriate next phrase when they're doing content writing by training those items, training those models, those language models on what it likely should be to try to predict the outcomes. And so the progression there comes when we're able to build massive, large scale models that's trained on tons and tons of real content. And where what you see now, to answer the question, can it write content? Can these models write content to spec? Well, up until about a year ago, you had major problems. It would dive in, it would degrade and write, and it would fall into repetition. So it would be writing and be kind of funky, and then it would say like dog, 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 d, d, and you would be seeing that. But now with the new cloud, processing technologies that are out there, not to get into too many details of one versus the other, some are good at some type of number crunching, some are good at others, right? And you're able to tune those. And with the new scale that's available with these various models, you're able to process and build tuned models that don't degrade. They don't degrade for even mid-length content. The most recent releases from OpenAI, GPT-3, which is the topic of note, very rarely degrades as frequently as even GPT-2 did. And these are just language models, if you want to look them up, that are focused on massive scale, massive numbers of parameters, massive scale, and people are going to be able to build applications and out of them and use them. But is it going to replace your blog? Not on its own, right? It is not going to set you apart from others. It's not going to set you apart from a level of expertise. Will it be able to solve tasks and accelerate a blogger's work? Absolutely. That's available today. I can take structured data. I can take an outline that I write. I can take a lead in that I write, and I can get recommendations of the next structure. I can get recommendations on the narrative. I can get recommendations even in draft form that are going to supplement what I want to do as a strategist. And by then taking that and validating it, validating any factual information, because it still struggles with facts, right? Still struggles with fact checking. Validate the narrative. Does it flow properly? Continue to tune it against my historical content. I'm going to be able to speed myself up, give me ideas, give my writer support. So maybe I know I'm writing an article and it's temporal. Here's a great example of a use case. I'm writing an article that's a news related item. It's about this one thing that happened, but I want to supplement it with background or information that may be more informational. I might be able to build that informational content and tune that a lot quicker. And maybe that's something I wouldn't have gotten to if I was just a news writer and I'm just writing about an event that occurred yesterday, right? I need to knock that out. I might be able to get background a lot quicker. So these various use cases that writers run into, they want to do something and they're likely not going to get to it because of time constraints, because of the required research, because they need to focus on the thing that they're an expert on. Those are the ones that are going to level up immediately. Replacement, it's a tall order. It's super hard. It's super hard to build these models and tune them enough to where they can actually provide a narrative, but 10 years from now, it won't be. No way.
And I think for some people to realize like how prevalent this is, think about your use of Gmail and how it actually finishes sentences for you. But most people don't realize that is very intelligent AI that is predicting what words should come next in a sentence. And that is natural language generation.
And yes, it's absolutely right ahead and that technology. And that is often tuned based on your usage. It feels second nature. It's not tuned based on only rules. It's tuned based on you. So, I mean, our natural language generation technology, First Draft, you can tune it for your corpus of content. It can write like you. It can write like, anyone you want. I'll name an author, but I just completely blanked on like for some reason. Now they can write like Paul Roetzer, you know. I can go look at the points plan book,
Yeah.
and I can write like you. I can, and I can do that today. And I can, and that is amazing. And I can, write like Mike. And you then are going to have to tune that. You're going to have to make sure that it fits, make sure that it's in there. But yeah, you can actually get that information. But writing ahead is tuned for you naturally. I love it because when I get a write ahead that's like only for me, it's like, oh wow, it knew that I write ahead, and it's gotten so much better. I always joke around on Gmail. For some reason, for a long time, every time I'd write FOR, it would tell me that it was FIR. And I'm like, I never mentioned fir, like fir trees. Yeah. What is going on? I couldn't imagine Gmail making that mistake right now. Like it writes ahead like extremely well, often mentioning people's names, which is kind of scary, right. Topics that only I really talk about, and it'll write ahead those things. I remember even 2 days ago when it wrote ahead a brand that I frequently talk about. And I was just like, this is getting better every day because it's tuning based on the information. It's reading everything you write. It's watching you write. It's not just tuned based on a language model or a grammar model. It's not like, do you use an Oxford comma or not? And now every time you use it right, I'm correcting you, like a Grammarly might. It's actually getting into the details of what your likely answer will be. And it's using global data as well as local data, your data, to give you a unique, valuable experience. And so you're going to see more use cases like this bubble up. But it's all out there right now, and it's just getting better and better. I mean, the difference between GPT-2 and GPT-3 in quality is astronomical.
I think I said it was 100 times more powerful than the newest model over the GPT-2 model.
Absolutely. And it is also a huge resource hog. It's super hard to tune for a really, really specific use case. And if you're a content marketer, you need really specific use case. You don't want to boil the world, right? You want it to be tuned for you, and it's kind of hard to get that. It's easy to write like some super basic thing that might not even be a fit for your site or whatever. But when you are able to take your ground rules and take the structure that you want and get outputs, that's when the game changes. That's what we've been focusing on at MarketMuse, and that's what we're able to deliver for our clients is those drafts that are tuned for their site or the sites they want to reference, fit an approved brief. So it's actually an outline that's approved. And we give you that inspiration so that your writers can, oh, wow, I'm going to expand this. This is pretty good. I'm going to keep it. This I'm going to update. Just really leveling up their ability to cover an entire topic. I mean, one example where they were focused only on guides. They were writing long form guides only. That's it. No support pages on those clusters. Now they're able to write all the clusters. They're actually able to knock out 10 pages for every one. And answer the common user questions that matter. When you read something that comes out of NLG and say, oh, this answers that question. People wanted to know that question. A writer might not catch that question. They might have a blind spot for that area of expertise. It's giving you a leg up to where you might not have even gotten there with content. It's really making it an exhibition of expertise. Can be
definitely it's an enhancement. Like we've always looked at it in recent years as the tech is improving as a writing assistant, and I think that assistant is getting better and better. It's like an intern level, and all of a sudden it's a entry level writer, and you can see, and I think this is a takeaway for everybody. The answer right now is no. Like you're not going to get rid of all your writers. You're not going to be done as a writer, but the machine is there to enhance what you're capable of doing, the depth of knowledge you can integrate into your content, the scope of what you can cover, the ability to improve your content, to rank higher. All of that's there now, but it's only going to get better. And there are some leaps being made to really advance that technology. And so I know what you guys are doing with your first draft technology is actually one of the first commercialized applications I've seen of this tech. So it's starting to be, and that's actually one of the questions we had come in was, how do you even get started looking for software like this? Nice. And so the obvious answer is, well, MarketMuse does these things, like the use cases Jeff was going through. It's what they've built the AI to do. But Jeff, like, what other guidance do you give people that are really at an early stage and trying, like, this may be mind blowing to people. Like, hold on a second. I can use AI to assess the 1,000 blog posts I've written over the last 10 years and find the ones I should republish. Like, that's crazy to me.
Today.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to people as that are just starting and realizing this ability even exists?
I think it is to take your advice. It's think of the things people want to move the needle on. It's to think of maybe a small project that I might want to focus, maybe to look at my editorial calendar for the next 3 months and like summarize what, and then try to implement these types of technologies to achieve that goal and make that make sense. And don't have unreasonable expectations. You know, just like when you publish content or update content, you do have to wait. It takes time. It takes time to see the benefits, but all boats rise. All your content gets improved when you publish great content. I don't know if people think through that. So many times people will publish a page and they think all of the output will be on that page. No, it's every page that page influences, drives boats up. So I think it's to start thinking critically about where you are in your processes, which ones are super outdated, which ones do you want to level up, come up with a couple projects that might make the case internally for investment, and then go from there. What I'll add from the previous part of the last one on the topic is where, and it might be a little controversial, is low quality, poorly written content that is purchasable, that's going away. Yeah. And, you know, why would you pay for really, really low quality content? And that's going to be something that we see quicker than replacement of a blogger's expertise. It's just, that doesn't, part two of that doesn't make sense. But low quality content, oh yeah, you're going to see that model, and you're already seeing that happen. Writing networks, writing resources, writing marketplaces are having to level up their game, level up their product offerings, really focus on great stuff.
And I know a lot of people have used those writer networks because you can get it for 5 cents a word or 10 cents, whatever the ridiculous rates they're charging are. And we've always taken the approach of you're going to get what you pay for. Not that content hasn't become more affordable in some ways, but at the end of the day, there's never been a shortcut to creating great content. This does kind of become one in a way. And there was actually a question about, we haven't done a ton of content publishing or any at all. Is this a place to start? Like, do you see this technology helping? Like, if someone can go in and build a topic cluster, like, we're experts in this, or this is the thing we want to bring to the market, what should we be writing about? Can you use it to build content strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I always like, for someone who has no site, you have a competitive or aspirational set of goals. So if you remember my 4 square there, it's the goals, and the goals can be driven by competitor influence, what's out there on the topic and what you want to be, plus, or just things you want to be. So you're then trying to predict the cadence of creation, how much content you need to create on each of these topics, and what speed, the velocity you need to execute in order to get a predictable outcome. So you can actually profile a competitor's path. So let's say you found a blogger, just personal blogger, you know, Paul's blog about AI. He wrote 4 articles a week for 7 years. All right, let's just say. And
hypothetically,
we can see what his arc is, how much he published on what worked, what didn't, how much is needed, how much power is needed to make an impact. Okay, I need to invest in this time frame. It's going to get me this potential outcome, plus or minus a particular percentage. That makes the business case internally to start. So that's the kind of output. You're typically looking outward or within on your goals when you have no existing footprint. You'd be surprised though. If you got a website of any shape and size, there's gold to be mined. If you have a site that has 90% of the traffic going to the homepage and you really haven't focused on content, there's really a lot of gold in the homepage, and we can find it.
And just from our own perspective, like, that is how we used MarketMuse at first. So we have published about 700 or 800 articles since we started the blog. And so MarketMuse kind of lays over that and can look at all the content we've previously published and identify opportunities and kind of prioritize for us which posts we should go back to and enhance and potentially republish. Because if you think about it, some of your best ideas and content comes when you first start writing. Like you're getting all this experience and ideas out of your mind, but you don't have an audience yet for it. And then fast forward 5 years, like in our case, we have almost 18,000 subscribers now, where we used to have 800. And some of what I thought was my best ideas, we wrote in 2016. Well, that stuff can be resurfaced now, and MarketMuse can actually recommend to us what else to integrate into that existing post, what questions to answer, what topics, and then we republish it. And to the audience, it's as relevant as it ever was, but even more so now into the search engines. We've just enhanced the potential of that post because it's more thorough.
And it's focusing on today's intent.
Right.
Right. And then that model, and it gets into the wing of understanding what you have and what you don't. A lot of people, if you've never conducted a content audit, or if you only do that yearly or quarterly, you likely have, we call them arms. You have content out there generating a lot of traffic that's not supported by other content. It's out there on its own. For some reason, it's punching above its weight. It's doing well. You need to support that content, or else it is a risk. You could lose it any day. You could lose it for a number of reasons, competitively, or just because, an update comes around and it says you're actually not the expert on this, because the search engines are getting smarter at smelling somebody who just got lucky with one content item versus they actually have the infrastructure. They're actually telling the story that they understand this topic. So you've got to start to protect these outlying wins as much as you need to find these opportunities. So that protection is critical. I was just looking at a website, try not to say the topics of the name. 90% of the traffic went to one page, and it was a post about only an adjacently relevant topic.
They probably thought their blog was doing great because they're seeing all the traffic coming in. It's like, things are going great.
And it was great post, 6,000 word guide. All right. You know what you can do with that? Basically what we do is we bridge that page to the rest of the site. Use the power of that page to write bridge content and connect it back to actually all their product lines. So it's not just a special interest piece about generational wealth, which was what this case was. It's actually connecting it to the rest of the stuff that they care about. So it's, again, what are my goals? I got surgical wins, right? There was piles of them in that example. Because when something ranks for one thing that's really big, it also ranks for thousands of smaller things. And that's because it's not about keywords. It's about concepts. It's about things. And when you start thinking critically about that, the wins are everywhere. And I mean, on your sites, the wins are everywhere. It's almost too much. Yeah, it's super hard to prioritize when you're writing great content.
Jeff, we got 2 minutes left. I want to ask one more to hopefully give everybody a little guidance and hope here.
Sure. Hope.
Can any content marketer enhance what they're capable of right now, or is there special training needed to succeed at using these tools?
No, it's instant wins. The three main ones: what should I update today? That's going to win. Quick wins. Looking at a particular topic, something that I've written, and know what should have been written. I find blind spots, but I also find areas of differentiation that I maybe haven't covered. That's just going to always be a blind spot. And then that competitive advantage. Where do you have competitive advantage? The easiest way to describe it is, if Mike writes a new article on NLP, it has a greater chance of doing well than if I started a brand new blog tomorrow called NLP by Jeff and wrote one article, the same article.
Right.
That competitive advantage is something you need to know for every topic. You need to know your personalized competitive advantage for every concept. So this time next week, every time you write an article, you can know your blind spots on that topic, competitive landscape, how you can differentiate, and how much investment you need to make. That will level up any content marketer, and that's available today.
Well, that's a great way to end. Appreciate your time again. So marketmuse.com, right? It's .com, isn't it? marketmuse.com and marketingainstitute.com if you want to learn more about either organization, and you can connect with Jeff. We will send out the recording and the deck tomorrow, so you'll have that, and Jeff's contact information will be in there. And then MarketMuse, I'm sure, will connect with you as well, just in case there's any additional follow-up information you need from them. Wow. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jeff, for doing this, and I'm sure we'll do it again soon, man.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.